The period of the Judges is about 1380 to 1000 BC. That's the period of the Judges. Okay, so you got Abraham, 2100, 1400, Exodus, and then you got 1300 to 1000. You have this period called the Judges. The people in the land, they're known as the Canaanites. Okay, and they were evil and wicked people. So much so that part of their worship would be to sacrifice their children to get their God's attention. And God sees that. He said, these guys got to go. And so he drives them, the nation of Israel drives them out of the promised land. But God says, I want them all out. They all got to go. Why do they all got to go? It's like a teenager on a Friday night, okay? You get a teenager on Friday night, they hang out with each other. You get a couple boys in the room, they get some bad ideas. You know? They find their parents' supply of toilet paper. They're like, let's go, guys. Let's ride. And that's what God feared for his people. Hey, the people of God, the Israelites, are supposed to be a light to the world. That the nations of the world would see God's hand upon these people and that they would come to know the Lord. And so you can't be, what they did was prostituting themselves. Just worshiping other foreign gods. Diving into sin like all the other foreign nations. So what do? They drove most of them out and left far too many. And just like God expected, those people corrupted the Israelites. And in the book of the Judges, there's this just awful cycle. It's wild. Okay? The cycle was this, that the Israelites would dive into sin. God would turn them over to their enemies. Enemies would attack them and rule over them and oppress them. And they would suffer greatly. Finally, when they hit rock bottom, they would turn back to the Lord, cry out to him to help them. He's so loving and so great. And for his glory, he rose up a judge, which was a political or military leader, kind of like a tribal chief that he rose up. And they would deliver the people from their oppressors. And then there would be a time of peace. And then after a little bit of that, they'd dive back into sin. And God would turn them over to their oppressors. And they would cry out to God. And God would raise up a judge. And he'd deliver them. They'd had peace. And they dove in again. That's the whole book of Judges. Here's where we find Gideon. Judges chapter 6. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, martyrs from Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying crops as far as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all their sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. These enemy hordes, coming with their livestock and tents, were as thick as locusts. They arrived on droves of camels, too numerous to count, and they stayed until the land was stripped bare. So Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. There's the cycle. And so they cry out to God, and God raises up a guy named Gideon. And as we find Gideon is in a hole in the ground, threshing wheat. And usually they did that out in the open so that the wind would blow the shell away. But instead of Gideon doing that out in the open so it would further the process, he was in this hole where they would make wine. And it's like, Gideon, what are you doing? Well, he's in hiding. He's scared. He's concerned about the Midianites. He's like, they've taken everything. I only have this little bit left. I'm going to do this here. And here the angel of the Lord comes to him. And I have some of my verses are in NIV because I like how it shares the story, the word choices that they use. So the NIV says, verse 12, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Imagine you're in that kind of hiding. This is the fear that Gideon has. And all of a sudden, God comes and says, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. It's like, where's the warrior? No, you, Gideon. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. God, do you have the right person? Verse 13. Sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord has brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. Gideon's like, the Lord is with us? What? We are completely destroyed and devastated. Don't you think if God was with us, we would look a lot different than this? And we might be asking, God, if you're with us, why did you take my grandpa? Why did you let my parents get divorced? Why did you let those people treat me like that? And I love that God doesn't always answer our questions. Because not every question we ask maybe needs to be answered just how we hope it is. Instead, God says, it says, then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength that you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you. And what I love about this part is sometimes our questions, and God can take all our questions. I'd encourage you, bring your questions to God. He can handle every question. He's not offended by your questions, right? But so many times our focus is so low. God, what about this? And God's like, man, I got this for you, brother. Stop getting your eyes so low. I got stuff for you that you can't even imagine. And God just moves on. Yeah, Gideon, you're devastated right now, but just wait. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. And God says, go with the strength you have. I love that. Go with the strength you have. Gideon's like, I don't have any strength. I've given all I have. But God knows. God knows him. Go with what you have. You don't have to have everything. Verse 15. But Lord, Gideon replied, how can I rescue Israel? How am I supposed to rescue Israel? I'm going to rescue the whole nation? Yeah, right. My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh. I'm the least in my entire family. You picked the wrong guy. I'm not talented enough. I'm not brave enough. I'm not courageous enough. I don't have the weapons. I don't have the army. I don't have the skills in battle. But God sees things differently. 1 Samuel 16. The Lord doesn't look at the external appearance, but the heart. He doesn't look at what people look at. God sees us differently. If only we could see ourselves like God sees us. Go in the strength you have. See, it's not so much who Gideon is, but who is with Gideon. Who is with him? 1,300 years later, a man would write something to the Christians in Rome, a place where you didn't want to be a Christian, where Peter and Paul would be killed for their faith and so many others. And to that, the Apostle Paul writes, if God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. That's who's with us. Gideon, you might not have much, but if you got God, you're going to be all right. The Lord is with you. Mighty warrior. Maybe you don't see yourself like that, but what if our kids stepped into school with all the expectations on them, with all the classroom standards, academic standards, with all their parents turning up the heat, with the conferences just around the corner, with their hobbies and their electives, with all the negative voices speaking over them, all the hurtful words, all the people, all the kids that are against them, that are tearing them down. But that they knew that the Lord is with them. That the Lord is with them, that He has a plan and purpose for them. And they just go in the strength that they have, and He does the rest. That we know that God goes before us, and that God is in us, and God has got our back. He's behind us too, and He works through us. That we just go with Him, and we don't work for our teachers, we don't work for our parents, we don't work for the kids at school, we don't work for our boss. We work for the Lord. And guess what? God wins every single time. God's purposes will not be thwarted. God's will be achieved every single time. So I just get in line behind Him and follow Him, knowing that it's His plan. Gideon, he finally gets convinced to step into what God has for him. And so, with just a little bit of faith, he takes his first step. That God has him go out, and his family has created these altars to other gods. And so in the middle of the night, he gets up and he's going to destroy one of these altars. So he gets up and he takes out the altar. He runs back home. In the morning, everyone's like, oh man, who destroyed the altar? And it creates a hubbub in the city. But God was doing something different. God was going to overthrow this false worship, establish His plans and His purposes for His people. He took a small step of faith, and it was scary, but God took care of him. His next step was much bigger. Okay, there's one. Here's another one. I want you to assemble an army, and let's take down Midian. We're going to take down the Midianites. And so Gideon gathers 32,000 troops. Well, how big is the army of Midian? It was over 100,000. Man, that's tough. That's tough. I don't think we can do it, but God is with us. So here we go. But God sees the army that Gideon has, is like, that's too many. You got too many. And so He sends 22,000 home. Like, you got to do it with less. Now He's got 10,000 against 100,000. Gideon's like, oh, I don't think so, God. Like, we had a tough time with 32, even thinking about, I don't know if I can convince these guys. And God looks at him and says, you're right. You still got too many. So God whittles it down to 300 men. And Gideon's probably beside himself like, these guys, I'm not sure. 300 men. God's like, yep, that's enough. And Gideon, here's what I want you to do. You can leave your weapons at home. We won't need those. Here's what I want you to take. I want you to take a jar, a torch, and a trumpet. What? Yep. And so here they go, 300 men, a jar, a torch, a trumpet. And it reminds us of Jericho. How are we going to take on Midian? It's impossible. We can't do it. You're right. You can't, but God can. Just grab the jar, grab the torch, grab the trumpet, and follow me. And so here comes Gideon with his 300 men. Midianites covering the land. And they come up to their army. And on Gideon's word, they smash the jars and blow the trumpets. And what happens? For some reason, it sends the Midianites into a panic. And before their eyes, the Midianites start attacking and killing each other. And that day, Gideon and his men drove the Midianites off of the land. And Israel had peace for 40 years. Why? Because one guy realize that through him, God can do amazing things. God had a purpose and a plan, and he's going to deliver his people. Am I willing to step in even when it doesn't make sense? Even when the odds are stacked against me? Am I willing to trust that God knows best? Because the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. I want you to hear that today.